You guys that are online, I know several people are watching. They tell me they're watching this morning online. You can text that number and it'll get all your information, and then we'll follow you. Anybody else get by cash or check? Raise your hand really big. The guys are coming around with envelopes, and here they come. Just stretch it. It's good. Right over here, a whole bunch of people. Alex is with us today. You want to take your purse? You like it? All right. Up here. Over here, guys. Is it cold? I do not think it's cold. Anyone else give by cash or check? Raise your hand. And if not, you can text 832-956-0150. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Where are you? Get over here. No, come on. Anyone else? All right, we appreciate you guys. We're going to give announcements at the end. How many of you guys were here for John Crowder? Wasn't that fun? How many of you guys? I saw the communion. I wasn't up there. That was hilarious. A fun communion. A drunken communion is what he called it. But there's just one bottle of wine, so it wasn't really that. So what I was thinking at that song, breathe them in, breathe them out, tell me what you're all about. And just what I was hearing was secondary breath. I don't really like how our English translates a lot of things, because our mind then goes to that word and what we believe that meaning of that word is, and it's usually a lot smaller. Usually when Jesus was speaking in its Aramaic, there'd be like up to 10 words in English that would describe one word in Aramaic. And so it's hard, but what I want to talk about today is two governments. And there's the government of fear, and then the government of agape. And I like to say agape because agape is the nature of God. God agape man. He gave man his nature. When it says God is agape, it's not God is just love. He's not just a friend. He's not eros. He's just not an emotional, romantic love, you know. He's just not family. He's agape. It continues. It never stops. He only is love. He isn't anything else. He only is agape. It's his nature. So no matter what your behavior is, no matter what my behavior is, no matter where we're operating, he is that. So it just keeps coming. It's a river. It's a fountain. It's the wind. It just keeps coming. His goodness just keeps coming. He reigns on the just and the unjust alike. It's his nature. The word fear, when you look at it in Greek, which this part's kind of the part that irritates me. I'll give you an example. And it irritates me in a good way because John Crowder made a statement. He said pretty much every Bible that you can have is really a commentary. It's pointing to something else. Without the Spirit, you guys, we are so many symbols and interpretations away and translations away from the heart. And that's how we were able to create so many different, denominations. But in the Old Testament in Hebrews, they took 10 different Hebrew nouns, and we translated it into English as fear. So 10 different words, and that's what we came up with is fear, and 8 different verbs. So 18 different words just in the Old Testament. The English translation just said fear. That's why we go, we don't fear God when it says to fear God, because we just threw that translation out there, fear. When it's reverence, it's awe, it's the trembling, it's an honor, right? It's a completely different position than this other word that means to withdraw, to decoil. I always picture a snake. When you go to picture a snake and the snake's out and he recoil, not decoil. I don't even know if that's a word. To withdraw, that's the other thing, okay? So we want to talk about two governments. So what happens in our mind is we have just associated fear with a feeling of dread, anxiety, these type of things. But it's so much more than that. Where we're not operating out of agape, we are operating out of withdrawal or fear, okay? So under this government is separation, withdraw, okay? So we keep saying this over and over. I hope you're saying it to yourself, that there is no separation. just that right there, we start looking around, and we look at that person that's evil, that person that's not me, that person that's the other, and even that term, that person, is separation. That anytime, all of that thinking comes from the government of fear or withdrawal. Whereas the agape government unites us as one. In other words, how could there ever be unforgiveness when I'm operating out of my God nature? It doesn't even exist. So even when I have to stop and forgive, it's a true tale. It's a true teller that I'm operating from the government of fear. So this is the carnal, everything, and it's in us, you guys. I'm not talking about someone else. Tell someone next to you that I'm talking about them. That you're talking about me. I'm talking to me. So everything that we see, all of these systems that we are now going, oh, maybe we're bound by a system. Oh, maybe, oh, the government's telling us, they could tell us this A, B, and C to do, but now I draw the line, And we're seeing all these systems. They first were constructed. Picture that word, construct. Okay? So the mind constructs. The carnal mind will construct, build, shape a reality. The banking system was constructed by man. There could be inspiration in it, but then we got into it. The religious systems were constructed by man. Marriages, the way we think we're supposed to interact, and you can read 1,000 books on what your needs are, what my needs are, it's constructed by man. And, these systems that affect us on every area. If you feel secure when you have money and insecure when you don't, you're under the government of fear, of the carnal. Okay? We're all in it. The thing is we're so entangled in the systems. Okay? Now, it's very easy to see the systems that were created outside of us, but I'm not talking about a system created outside of you. I'm talking about a system within, a government within. Does that make sense? So this is where the ego self lives. This is ego self. Ego self, Sheila self, your ego self, always wants to protect, survive, blame, preserve, right? It's because this man right here, they are governed by their senses. They are a sensual man, and I don't just mean sensual. They're governed by their senses. So what they see, hear, taste, smell, feel, what their reasoning understands is real. What they don't see, feel, hear, taste, what they don't see is real is not real. And I told you last week, and you guys know this, we are living in and will continue to live in a spiritual revolution. Why? Because the physical systems are coming down. God's shaking them. The reason that I'm telling us this over and over and over is I'm saying, as Jesus said, don't be afraid. That I have overcome every system of the world. When he said I overcame the world, it's the orderly system. It's the way things are arranged. I've already set it in place. And I was just thinking as we're singing, the joyful noise will rise. Okay, this is when you're going through hell. And instead of fighting the hell that you're fighting in your mind, you let the joyful noise rise. Oh! You just you drive it out. What I do in the mornings, I will wake up, and it could be a dream. How many of you guys have ever had a dream, and right away you wake up and you're trying to work through the dream in your mind, okay? That's the system, okay? Or you're trying to work through what's going on in your life. You had a fight with somebody, it's whatever it is, okay? This is the mind, the carnal mind is where the struggle is, am I right? Okay, so what I've been doing, right when I wake up, and it's continual, it's just there. Because we have been addicted to the mind, we've been addicted to the systems, we've lived like mere men, we've been attached. There's not condemnation in it, but the level of power in your life is the level that you're attached to the carnal to the fearful government that's within you. So I wake up, and I can feel it. Like even what I'm going to speak on. You start trying to work it out. You feel it right here. You can feel it, right? And I will begin to breathe in. We're singing, breathe it in, out. I picture myself breathing in a construct, like a wall. Like you're trying to build something. You're trying to work something out, right? You're trying to figure out why you can't get that breakthrough. You're trying to work something out in the mind. And I'll breathe in, and I'll picture all these like bricks, or sometimes it's different things, and I'll push them into the spacious place, and then breathe it out. And I'll do that several times, an actual breath. And it'll settle me into a deeper space. As my mind is being settled into this place, I begin to see the bricks dissipate. I'm from Oklahoma. I know what happens when wind hits a building. Okay? And I begin to picture it. Because heaven isn't somewhere else. Heaven is inside of me. And if I can bring this construct that I'm building, if I can bring these bricks in and these lies that I've built my life on into that spacious place of heaven, it becomes of nothing. It has no power. Even the word stronghold, you guys know they would literally build a wall around a city. We went to a castle in Ireland, and you could see that where they would run around this wall, right? And they're guarding it. That's what the ego does. You made a decision when you were 16 not to get hurt by a girl again, you know. You made a decision when you were 12 not to trust somebody. All these, the constructs that are within us were created from the sensual self. You ate something and it made, how many of you guys have eaten something and gotten food poisoning? Let's see the food poisoning people. Okay? And then how many of you guys you were ready to go eat something like that again? I got food poisoning from, do you guys remember that fish place with the captain on it? What was it? No, it was like Long John Silver's. I got food poisoning at this is not a commercial for Long John Silver's. I don't even know if they're still in business, but I got food poisoning from Long John Silver's and never ate there again. It became a trigger. Somebody was telling me a while back, I was talking with a friend, and they were saying, you need to understand when you do this, this, and this. I was raised, and they were telling me what happened in their childhood. And I'm like, you need to understand that I want to trigger you. The triggers are a good thing. If we're going to work around each other's triggers, we're going to be the most dysfunctional family that there is. Now, I don't want to trigger you to be mean, but if you want to mature, if you want to mature, you need to trigger. So God gave you a wife to trigger you. He gave you a teenager to trigger you. Your teenager did not make you mad. Anger is within you. It's part of the government that you've set up. Thank you for that teenage kid that triggered you. Ego wants to blame the kid. In agape nature that's already within you, there are no triggers. No matter what we do, we push. We were good at it, aren't we? We push those buttons, and we keep getting love. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love endures. All of these things in 1 Corinthians 13. Love doesn't even recognize when it's done wrong. I'm going to use these terms, and I'll hand it over to you, Alex. We talk a lot about frequency. Agape is a frequency. God spoke, he uttered, a literal vibration came forth. And it's what's holding the earth together. It's what's holding the universe together. He didn't say it and it was on a linear scale way back when. He said it and it is. It's what's keeping us, the planet, from us spinning off in space. It's what's keeping your lungs breathing in and out. It's the breath of God, the word of God, the vibration, the frequency of love. Okay? Fear, and this is what I was hearing when we were singing, is secondary breath. Everyone say secondary. Secondary breath. Now I want you guys to meditate on this because breath, you cannot separate the word breath from spirit. Wind from spirit. It all translates the same. We're talking about our English language and the Aramaic language, okay? So when it says the Spirit of God or the spirit of fear or the spirit of love, it's the breath of love. It's the life force of love. Now, you know we know that God breathed into Adam. It wasn't secondary. It was life force. It's the same way when you get a revelation and it can't be taken from you. That's what it is. It's the breath of God. Okay? Darren used to say over and over, I cannot give you truth. It doesn't mean he wasn't speaking truth. It doesn't mean you're not hearing truth right now. But if you just take my word for it, if you take the person that you're listening to word for it, the book, that's secondary breath. It has to be a revelation in you to produce life. If not, the very letter that was to give life kills because it becomes secondary. So God breathed into Adam, and as we know, Adam breathed into the animals. He natured the animals. When he named them, he natured them. To the degree, I don't know who was saying it this weekend, that they could have just been in essence before him, where he created them and then they took shape. That would be cool, huh? I mean, I know you guys know that man and God made the labradoodle. I don't think there was a labradoodle on the Noah's Ark, right? That we're still, I have a labradoodle. So the breath that the animals breathed was secondary breath. It's the level of the beast. It's a different frequency. I don't mean beast as in Satan, okay? I mean the carnal nature is the beast nature. You actually have a natural part of us that goes back into the earth. It's the beast nature, not the beach nature. Some of you, it might be the beach nature, okay? It's the beast nature. It goes back into the ground. These are people that live by the impulses of their senses. These are secondary breath. We live by secondary breath like the animals. We live without revelation from God. It says those that don't have revelation, they wander. They're blind. They don't know. So they live out of the beast nature. This is why God came and had to give the law, because he was dealing with a carnal man that was living out of beast nature. So instead of destroying each other, okay, they took your sheep. Don't go kill everyone in their family. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. It was grace. It was grace. Because they were living on such a level out of their senses that whatever became right in that culture became right. Now, the way we're going to walk through this and continue to mature, you guys, it's not going to stop. I don't believe it's going to stop. There's a part in us that want to go back to when life was normal. We just had another really, really dear friend that their son was killed in a tragic accident 2 days ago. They did ministry with us for years. His son's 18 years old. It's just awful. And I hadn't been through, my kids are crying. We're just like, oh my gosh, you're just kind of numb. I hadn't lived in a time where there was this much tragedy. I know that some of you have. But fear has been released over this nation, over the nations. Fear causes us to separate and withdraw. Fear is that government brings the us and them. The only way for man to rule over man is within the government of fear. It's the only way. And so they know this, okay? As we operate from the government of heaven, which is the breath of God, there is no one can rule over you. You are literally ruled, you are governed from within. And heaven there is coming into earth. You ready? All right.
I'm going to use my phone because I have my notes. Okay. It's actually because I left them and I had to have Ramsey text them to me. So I'm basically just going to say the exact same thing that Sheila's saying and also give a story and tell on myself because that's always fun. Can you hear me now? I have to hold it so close to my, okay.
Can you guys see your face on camera? All right.
What I was saying, I'm going to say exactly the same thing in just a different way, and then I'm also going to tell a story and tell on myself because I'm good at that. And I feel like it's relatable when someone else is up here saying, oh, this is my ego in action, and you're like, oh, yeah, that's me too. So I'll start with the story, which was yesterday. I was having an altercation with someone specific in my life, and I was already struggling with some of the news that I had heard, and just my heart was hurting just for their family and just aching, just that aching feeling. And I was just in this state of, I've gotten to the point where my awareness knows when I'm in a more dense state, when I'm from a lower frequency or energy or however you want to say it, I can feel it. But sometimes it just feels good, so I don't actually try to move straight into coming up a little higher because I just want to wallow in my self-pity for a little bit longer. Or just be mad. But I'm aware that I want to be mad, and so I'm like, okay, I want to be mad. I'm going to set a time period, 2 hours. I'm going to be mad for this 2 hours, and then I'm going to let it go and move on. But then the guilt comes afterwards, and then I feel so guilty. And it's funny because you see the differences on this board, and you see ego, and you see fear, and you see this more dense energy, and then you see abundance, and you see scarcity, and you see the differences. All that this is, all that human nature is, it's here for us to be able to see both. So it doesn't have to, you don't have to feel guilty for the human part of you that is human. You just have to recognize it and then realize that you're bigger than that, you're greater than that, and rise above it when you're ready. If you want to set a 10-minute period, 2 hours, that's fine. But it's the recognition that you're greater than this. You're not your human nature. This is not who you are. You act out of that constantly sometimes, more than usual, some weeks and less on other weeks. But there's no guilt in it. There's no shame in it because we all have that side of us. It's just rising above it and saying, okay, that's not who I am. And so yesterday, I'm just upset, and then I had an altercation with someone, and their energy was very dense, and I could just feel it. And it was anger, and it was aggression, and it was mean. And this person starts attacking me, and I'm already in an emotional state, and I was aware of that. So because I was already in that state of mind, it instantly just starts triggering me, and I start getting so upset and talking to that person in a more belittling way because that was my defense mechanism. And so then I call my mom, and I'm crying, and I'm talking to her, and then I said out my mouth, and this is what I said, and this is the part of me telling on myself because I think things like this sometimes, and this is the ego. And I'm crying, and I said, why are all the good people dying? And I said, can you not just take some bad ones? And immediately when I said that, I just heard spirit within me go, your definition of bad? But I was so angry in the moment from this altercation, and I was so hurting over the people that we've lost. I'm just like, and I knew right then, ego, that's just ego speaking. So then I immediately got into guilt, and I was like, I felt guilty for saying that because I'm not God. I don't get to determine whether someone's good or bad. Who am I to define that in another person? But it was in my heart, and it was what I was feeling emotionally. And so then I called my mom back. She's going, it's just, change your atmosphere, change your energy. And she was annoying me, so I was like, I gotta go. So then I hang up, and like 10, 20 minutes later, I call her back, and I said, I'm sorry, my ego just needed to vent for you. You're right. I need to do exactly what you said. Thank you. And she was like, you're welcome. And then I felt so much, I still was feeling guilt with it that I didn't even want to speak this morning because I said that out my mouth, and I was feeling so much guilt about what I said. And it wasn't even that I said it, it was that I was feeling it in here. And I knew that I was feeling it. So it wasn't just what I said, it was something that I meant, and I was meaning harm to someone else because of the way they were so affecting me. And it's been a pattern in my life with this person, but I know that person was sent in my life to get me into this place right now. And when God talks about your enemies being your closest friends, it's the truth, because the people that trigger you the most in your life, that cause you the most hell, are the people that are bringing the most truth out of you. And you're going, okay. And then, but in that truth, I'm also saying, well, I'm not that person. Sometimes I act out of that ego self, but that is not who I am, and that's not my being. And what we're dealing with right in this state of mind is because people think that's who they are. So then they live in guilt and shame and regret and anger because they're like, no, that's who I am. And it's not. And it's a simple acknowledgement of, no, I'm not that person. And I wanted to put the word, religion eats off of that. That's their bread and butter, is your ego. Without ego, the church wouldn't make any money. So worth, I was looking around, I was walking somewhere in the city, and I was looking around, and I read this somewhere, and it was a really profound thought to me, and so I consistently think about it, how everything that humans do out of the human nature is to reiterate some type of, that our existence matters. Everything we build, everything we create, if it's not coming from a place of love, it's trying to reinforce that we're existing and somehow we're worth existing and somehow that matters. And so as I was looking around, and you can feel that energy of people just walking by. Everyone just wants to be seen. They want to know that they're worthy. And in ego, you'll never feel worthy. You'll never feel enough. You'll never get that sense of what you're looking for. So you're constantly living out of a state of always needing to find something that makes you feel worthy. Whether it's a relationship or a job or how much money you'll make, you're constantly looking for something to give you that sense of feeling, because that feeling doesn't exist within the ego. Because that feeling is a being within you that is God. The part of you that is worthy is the part of you that is worthy no matter what. It's the part of your being that I don't have to do anything to gain worth. I have all the worth I need within me, and it's just who I am. But that very thought, or someone, even the very first time I read that, it hit me and it made me really uncomfortable. And I was like, why? And it's because if you've lived, which most of us have because of how we've been trained, even in religion, society, our culture, we've lived in such a place of always having to prove our worth. So someone to come up to you and just say, no, you're just worthy just being alive and breathing is almost offensive, because I've worked so hard to be worthy. And you're telling me I don't have to do anything at all but just stand here and all of a sudden I'm just worthy because I'm becoming aware and acknowledging it, but I'm still worthy even if I don't? And so it's almost offensive to our minds. And so I'll go places and I constantly am just looking around, and when I'm looking at someone, me and Ramsey were at our apartments, and we were in the Sky Lounge, and we were looking down, and there was this homeless man, and he was like bathing in the fountain, and he was doing really weird, you could tell he was probably on a lot of drugs. He was doing really weird things, and he was like run around, and then he'd take his shoes, and he had lots of pairs of shoes, and he was just doing all kinds of funny things, and we're just watching him. And as I'm watching him, I was just trying to feel his worth, because he was so worthy. And anything that he did not make any sense at all. I don't even know. He would like throw his bag over the fence and then run and go get it and then bring it back. I was like, but just looking at that man and realizing his state wasn't trying to prove anything to anyone. He was just enjoying his bath in the fountain. But like, what a state that most humans never get to, that they don't even care what anyone around them thinks because they're just like, whatever. And so I just was looking at this man, and it was just kind of funny to watch him, and I just was feeling within myself the worth that he is. And so when I go to places, I look at people, and I'm just trying to feel the worth that they are. Because I've lived in such a state where I've been so judgmental and hard on myself, and I recognize in reflection to that, I've been so hard on people. And so to rewire that, I need to go out and I need to look at people and just recognize their worth in them. And sometimes, a lot of times that looks like, for me, is acknowledging that worth in them and speaking it to them, even when it feels uncomfortable. Because that's what everyone's looking for. They just want to know that their existence matters, and that for whatever reason they are alive, that it's because they're worth something. They have some type of value. And we're moving into this place where we as a church, us here, we're carrying that, and people are so looking for that right now. To move out of the fear density is just to come over here and love. And when we can become aware of how many decisions and thoughts we have, you guys, how many thoughts we have every day that are fear-based, it's so gross. And I recognize, and I'm really working on this, and it is hard because so many of my subconscious thoughts are fear-based. So I am in fear all the time. And the reason we have relationships, the reasons that we have those triggers, is so that it can recognize, is that fear or is it love? Which one are you operating out of? So poor Ramsey. He has to deal with he's been having to deal with all my fear, and I've been having to deal with all his fear, so we're just triggering each other back and forth. But it's helped me grow so much because as soon as he hits that wound and a fear and I shut down and I'm just like, I can't talk to you. That's what I do when I'm hurt. I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to look at you. I don't want to see you. I want to deal with this on my own. He wants to fix it right then. So then he's like more like, Alex, what's going on? I'm like, don't look at me. And so we have these conflictions in how we deal with pain and triggers. But it's so helped me recognize how much I've lived out of fear. My whole relationships have been based out of fear with everyone that I've been in contact with. How are they going to perceive me? And so I had lived in so much fear of how people would perceive me, I just didn't even want to mess with it, so I just wanted to be alone. I don't want to be in a relationship with you because I don't want to actually see the reflections of myself in you. And it comes back to how you feel about yourself. And so as we come into this worthiness of who we are, the type of energy, I used to love the services that were loud and crazy and there was so much energy, but the movements of where we're going, it's going to be lighter and softer and calmer. And it's going to be a different energy, and it might make you feel uncomfortable at times. But we're moving from being so attached to density and form to being attached with spirit and breath. And that's lighter, that's calmer. That's not, the bawling warfare on the ground that we used to do, trying to, pray it through. It's just this sense that I don't have to pray through anything because I already am exactly what I need to be in this moment because I'm worthy and I'm a perfect being connected to Source and God at all times. And as we step into that, you can even notice the way people move, what kind of energy they're coming from. If they're lighter, if their movements are a little bit slower, if people are denser, they're walking a little heavier, they're a little bit angrier, you can feel the energy of it. And all of that is, when I say energy, is from this place or from this place. That's it. There's only two places. Your thoughts only come from two places. Are they coming from fear? Are they coming from, I'm unworthy, I'm trying to prove myself? Or are they coming from here? The majority of my thoughts on a daily are trying to prove myself. And that's what I'm trying to become aware of. So I'm rereading a book called The New Earth by Eckhart Tolle. Love him, love the book, really recommend it. And he goes into sin and the Greek meaning of missing the mark, and we've all heard that. But he says it, missing the point. Sin is to miss the point of human existence. All that sin is for you to not realize why you are alive and existing. Any other state of trying to prove worth, trying to get worth, is sin. And all that is that you are misunderstanding why you are existing on this planet. That is it. And then, and when my dad said this often, to repent is to just change your mind. So if sin wasn't what we thought and repentance isn't what we thought, it's not this like bawling, tearing of the clothes, please forgive me. It's, okay, yesterday I said something out of a place of trying to prove my worth because somebody was challenging my worth. So I was in this state. I was in the state of ego. I was in sin, if you want to use that word. So I'm going to repent. I'm going to change my mind. I'm going to call my mom back and say, hey, that was just my ego talking. You're right. I'm going to come up a little bit higher. That's all it is. It's that easy movement. But why we make it so much harder is because from ego, we're still trying to prove that you were right. Yeah. You're still trying to prove your point, prove your worth. So you're still in this state of mind. To repent is to change energies, is to move from this to this. It is to turn your back on this and to walk into who you actually are. If you're in an argument, and I've said this before, and you're trying to get that person to see what they did wrong, even if they were in the wrong, and you're trying to get them to see that, and you want them to apologize to you, you're still out of ego, even if they did you wrong. Because ego needs them to validate that you were right. And love doesn't need any validation. Love is just like, okay, have a great day. And it's still not enough. Because human nature is never enough. It's never enough. And so that little part of you that never feels worthy enough, that's okay. Just acknowledge it and recognize that that's a lie and that's not true. And it's not real. It's a part of our existence so that we can see the goodness of the Father. It's a part of our existence so that we can see the truth. All that this is to get you to a place to experience you in the form of love. That's all that it is. Every trigger, every situation is just to get you into a place to recognize the love in that situation, to recognize that you are love, you are that being. And so during the wake, there was a girl, I don't know her name, who was playing the piano, amazing singer, Amy. She's wonderful. I love you, Amy. I don't know you, but I love you. And she was singing, and then she stopped, and she was talking about how no more separation. And she was talking about coming from a place of whatever you're going through and singing in that place. And it really hit me when she said that. And I was like, I want to do that, you know. So I'm sitting there, and I know I talk about this at least one Sunday, but I'm not apologizing for it because I'm not sorry. But so I started to picture myself in some of the hardest times in my life because I want to rewrite my script, and I want to remove the victimhood that I put on myself to allow some of my behavior, because that's all that being a victim is trying to allow your behavior and trying to say that it's okay. Justify it, and it is okay. That's the thing. You don't have to justify it. It's okay that you act like that. You know, you're just out of your ego. No big deal. Change your mind. It's all good. But we like that, and especially in this country. We really like to validate why we're so angry. So we're dealing with all these symptoms all the time, and the truth is that people are angry because of something that is hurting within them. But if I can attach myself to a cause, then it justifies it, and then it makes it okay. No, deal with the anger in you first. Deal with that in you first. Anyways, that was not what I was saying. So as she was saying that, I started to go through events. And one event was when my mother called me, when she was in Tijuana with my dad, and she called me. And this was also just really good to do, because if you've ever broke down and screamed and cried, that does cause memory in the body. And so I try to remember those times when I've gotten so angry that I have a physical reaction, because I want to release that from my body, because your body has memory and it knows those times. That's why when someone can do something that has happened to you before, you start to shake, or you get nervous, or you start panicking. So I've been trying to rewrite those because I've had a lot of anxiety held in my body. So I went to the time when she called me to tell me that my dad had passed on. What had happened is she called me on the phone, and I screamed at her that she was a liar, which I apologized for. That was my ego, I'm sorry. I screamed that she was a liar, and I fell back onto the floor, and I just remember it was like an out-of-body experience. I could just see myself screaming on the floor. And so I went to that place, like Amy said, and from that place, I started to sing, "Within me rises a joyful noise." And I rewrote the screaming and the trauma that had happened that my body remembers, obviously. See, it can still make me emotional like that because my body can feel that moment so quickly. So I went back to that place when my body is screaming on the floor, and I think I was screaming liar over and over. And I centered myself, and it was my spirit self because my body was still screaming. But my spirit self started singing, "Arise in me as a joyful noise. Arise in me in a joyful noise." And I saw my body and my spirit connect. And then I just saw peace rush over me. Now I rewrote that memory for myself so that I could let the trauma go. I rewrote that memory so that I could release it from my body. And it's that simple, you guys. It's just quickly going there in your mind and rewriting it and then releasing it from who you are, releasing it from your body. Now, sometimes that looks like an angry fit and you punched a wall. Okay, go ahead, go to that memory, punch the wall, pull your hand back.
Who in here has punched a wall? Let me see your hands. I just don't get it. That has to hurt.
I think that's more of a man thing. But go to that memory, punch the wall. When you pull your fist back, put your hand on your stomach and sing, "Arises in me is a joyful noise." And rewrite that memory. Let that anger go. That's in your body. That's a memory. Let it go. All that you're doing when you do that is you're going into the human nature where our memories are stored, where our subconscious, whatever, is. You're going in that memory, and then you're repenting in that memory. You're changing your mind in that memory. You're changing how it affected you, that feeling that came over you. And then you're moving back into this space. And it seems really hard in the moments because the feelings are so strong. You guys, the normal part of what life was, the normal mind, hold on, I wrote this down because Albert Einstein said it and I loved it. He talked about the normal state of mind is the veil of delusion. The normality that you want to get to was the veil of delusion of the world that we were living in. Normal was just us pretending that all this crap wasn't going on because we didn't see it or didn't want to see it. But now that that veil's gone, yes, it is so uncomfortable because the truth can be at times because you recognize everything that you once believed to be true is not actually true at all. And that is offensive to my mind. But it is a veil of delusion, and you can't go back. Once that veil is lifted, there is no going back. You can't unsee what you've seen. And you guys, it is the grace of God. It is the grace of God that these systems are being so torn down, and it's so in your face. It's so online and in the media so that you can face these truths that you held to be true. And I write this all the time. I know nothing. Everything I once believed is somehow not true, except for the foundation of what I was taught on the core being of who I am in Christ within. That is the only truth I can come to.
We said we wanted to go down the rabbit hole, and then we want familiarity. But there's not familiarity down the rabbit hole.
No, not at all. Yeah, absolutely.
So when we were singing that A Joyful Noise Shall Rise this morning, I didn't really want to sing it. I was a little mad or peed off or whatever you want to say. But God said, and exactly what you're saying, he said, just rise above it for just a minute, okay? Just trust in me. And I'm like, okay. And so I just closed my eyes, and I envisioned myself rising above it and singing, a joyful noise shall rise. I'm singing it, you know. And he said, now look back down at yourself. And I looked at how ugly my little fit was, what you were just saying. And I'm like in a little position of poor, pitiful me. And he's like, is that really where you want to be? I'm like, yes, it really is, you know. He's like, say it again. So I just kept, it was almost like, it's just like, it was so simple of saying, this is where I'm at, but this is where I want to be. And all it was a choice. And so I just kept singing it over and over until that didn't want to be there anymore. And so it's just that easy. Sometimes we like look at ourselves and we want to pet our problems, and we're such victims, we want to pet that and we encourage it, we make it bigger instead of saying, no, I mean, I'm mature enough in God to know to say, no, I'm going to sing this instead and choose, no matter how I feel, how I feel hurt, I feel pain, but no matter how I feel, I'm going to step into this and sing it. And then all of a sudden it looks down and you're like, I'm like a little, like you say sometimes with Joni, I'm Joni, throwing a little fit. Well, look how cute that is. Okay, get over yourself and move into this. It's that easy.
And I'll say this real fast, you guys, as well. If you're trying to fight the ego, you're still in ego. Trying to kill the ego, trying to be angry, I'm so mad that I'm like that, that's still the same energy. It's still ego. You can't win ego by fighting it. You win ego by acknowledging it, saying it out loud. Okay, I'm throwing a fit, or I'm angry, I want to be mad. Why is, God taking all the good people? That recognizing that was me recognizing, okay, that's ego. It's not me trying to fight it or kill it or destroy it. Ego's going to be there. It's just about acknowledging it and becoming aware of it.
That's the scripture when it said if they would have known, they wouldn't have put him on the cross. The religious leaders were only able to see from a lower frequency. So they were operating out of ego's frequency. If we shut him down, we're going to shut it down. They couldn't see the enemy, the other spirit, the other nature, the other frequency cannot even see the frequency of love. It cannot comprehend. Remember how we used to say we pray in tongues because the enemy can't understand it or something goofy we used to say? It's nothing about the language. It's about a frequency. The utterance of God's voice, the breath of God's voice cannot be comprehended from a carnal standpoint. And so that's when the enemy, the devil, becomes the toothless dog helping you get to where you're going. Because also the enemy, the darkness, is also under the rule of God. But you'll get your teeth knocked out when you're on the same level, that same frequency. But when you're operating out of your God nature, the lower frequency, the lower nature, the dark spirits, the enemies of your life are helping you get to where you need to go. All things work together for good for those that are living out of their agape nature.
This is a side note. This is not what I want to share. What I want to share is so in sync with what you guys just shared. But I told the Lord that I was really mad that he took Darren, because every time I would come, he would always confirm something the Lord was teaching me. And I never talked about it with Darren. I just knew he had this gift to pull on whatever I was going through with the Lord, and he would address it. So I was like, I'm angry that you're taking that voice out of my life. Well, he has given me a new prophet in my life, and that's Alex, because every time she speaks, I'm like, that's what I'm talking about to the Lord this week. So I'm just really thankful for what a gift you are. Anyway, this week I had a family member kind of handle a situation really poorly, and they are just filled with so much guilt and shame this week. And I love this person, so I didn't want them to be stuck in this guilt and shame. It's like, okay, you messed up. Like, let's move on. And so the Lord woke me up at like 4 a.m., and I just started singing this song by Bethel Music called Mercy. And I just started singing this over my friend at like 4 a.m., and I was like, you were singing over my friend, like, God's never, ever, ever going to take back the fact that he chose you. He is never going to say, oh, I should not have chosen you to carry my image. And I just started singing, I will wake and spend my days loving the one who has raised me up. Y'all, we're being raised up by the Spirit of the Lord right now. And I was just declaring over it, it's like, he's taking us from death to life. And the scripture, the word says from right to wrong. And I was like, he isn't taking us from right to wrong. He's taking us from blind to sight. And, I'm going to spend my days just loving him because he's raising me up. And I just started singing this over my friend, my family member. And I messaged him and I said, you no longer live, but Christ lives in you. Okay? That means that you are Christ everywhere you go, right? And so when we mess up, it's just a matter of saying like, oh, wait, I'm Christ. I no longer live, but it's Christ who lives in me. So I'm going to walk out, and we are to be hidden in Christ. That's what the scripture says. So what do we have anything to be afraid of? What do we have anything to be fearful or in shame about if we get to be Christ everywhere we go? So it's just singing that song over ourselves, whatever song it is that the Lord puts into your heart of like, he delights in giving mercy. Mercy triumphs over judgment. So I sang that over my friend, and I can't wait to see, what happens because, it's great to validate people and go up to them and speak to the Christ in them. But y'all, we're energy, so you can just feel it. And I don't even have to be right next to my friend and speak life over my friend, even though I did that. I can just feel that over. And the things that we used to war and all that, like, I don't have to war, like, and I tear down this demon and that spirit and blah, blah, blah. I literally was like, oh, you're so merciful, and the Lord is raising you up, and you're so beautiful, because he is making all things beautiful. And so then I started, like, singing, like, no, y'all, we are making all things beautiful. We are making all things beautiful.
What did you say about mercy during the conference? You said mercy is what? It was powerful. I'm trying to repeat it. I can't think about what you're saying as mercy. You guys, this is really funny because as we're going through this, I realize how my life has set me up for this. Because as you know Josie, who followed the rules and was in church, and it brought me a lot of joy to break those rules. But when I would break them, for whatever reason, it's always been like this in my life, and my parents always said this, it would cause this major chaos event.
For you that don't know, Alex has wrecked 6 cars, 6 vehicles, totaled a few of them. Am I correct? 7 wrecks, 3 vehicles totaled. Yeah, 3 totaled. And God told me that she had to learn things out loud. So she taught me how to live in peace. Isn't that awesome? So she would have to get right to the edge to see, oh, maybe I shouldn't be here. And the stories are hilarious after I broke the fear off my life. So here you go.
Well, and I committed to my role to bring them peace. I knew what I had to do, and I was committed to doing that. And so anytime I ever did anything, it would be so crazy and affect everyone somehow. So I chose to sneak away during youth one time and drive around town with a boy because there was nothing else to do in our town. And then I came back to youth. That's all we did. We drove around and then came back. And one of my youth leaders caught me, and I was like, forget this. So I ran away. So then the whole youth group is out searching for Alex on the streets because I ran away. Oh, it was chaotic. They are calling all my friends.
Plus, the guy she was with is from a different town, and it's the town that's our rival. And so, like, a football player calls a football player from the other side. Like, she literally was gone, like, 20 minutes. But you would have thought, we don't know what we would. I mean, it was ridiculous.
I could see them where I was hiding. I could see them with their flashlights. And it was so big, I didn't want to come back. I was like, oh, heck no. And they're out there, Alex! And I was like, what do I do? But it had to be that big and that loud. And the reason I felt that has happened to me is because then other people later would come to me and be like, hey, this happened to me, or this happened to me. And it wasn't as crazy or as loud as what happened to you, but it was similar. But I also was born with some type of natural self-love, so I would do that situation, and then the next day I'd be fine with it. Like, well, then, whatever.
So she wrecked one of our cars. Yeah, this is fun. She wrecked one of our cars, and so I called Jared because he was in the town where she was. You guys know Jared. So Jared helps her, and then it's on a tow truck. And Alex, after she called me, she cried. That was over it. So Darren sees the picture on Facebook, and Alex is standing in front of a tow truck with our car. And he's like, babe, I just need her to let me process a little bit before she starts posting. Like, she was already okay, and he hadn't even known that she had wrecked the car.
Anyways, the reason I say that is because I like to get up here and tell on myself because we go through these things, you guys. All of us face our ego on a daily basis. And just to hear someone else go, okay, I say and I think horrible things sometimes, and then I'm going to acknowledge it, and I'm going to tell myself in front of people, even if that's just your partner or you're in a relationship, just be like, hey, when you acknowledge it, when you bring light to it, it dissipates. That's all that you have to do. There's no work and there's no fight in it. And that's why we've really been fighting this thing in religion, because religion's all about having to purify yourself and get holy and gain something. All that you already have. All that you need to do is go ahead and recognize the ego part, recognize where you've been operating out of fear, and by recognizing it, the light dissipates the darkness. That's it. The hard part is removing yourself from this and moving into this. So when I said set a time limit, it's because now that I'm becoming more aware, I can recognize when I'm in this atmosphere. And, some days I wake up and I feel sad. I feel self-pity. And sometimes I just allow that. And I'm just like, okay, I'm just going to be sad today. I'm going to go there. I'm going to sit in my emotions. And then when I'm ready, I go ahead and just step out. Now, I've noticed that the more and more I do that, the shorter time periods I allow myself to be in this state of mind. But because we've been born into thinking that this state of mind is who we are, this is where we feel comfortable. This is when we feel like ourselves. So I've had this the past couple weeks is where I will be in this space, and my ego will tell me, no, this is who you are. No, you're the black sheep of your family. No, you're the person who causes chaos everywhere you go. No, you're blah, blah, blah. And then I look at that and I say, no, I'm the person who's over it in 2 hours. I'm the person who can re-love myself and leave the shame and guilt after just a minute. Because I've always been celebrated. I've always been loved. I always had, and I start to tell myself that. And one thing I tell myself, you guys, when I go somewhere and insecurities start hitting me and I want to run and hide because that's how I deal with my insecurities, is shutting myself down. I look around the room, and I tell myself this in my mind, this room is so in love with me. These people are so in love with me. I'll be outside walking in the park. Oh, nature just loves to be around me. I just love to be in nature. And that sounds silly, but I'm speaking to the existent being within me. I'm acknowledging who I really am. And I'm telling the ego voice that tells me, no, you're the angry person. You're the person who can't forgive. And I'm saying, but that's not who I am. And I'm telling myself with my vocal cords out my mouth, I'm releasing a vibration that you can feel out of my mouth. And I'm saying, no, this is who I am. And there's been multiple days when I look crazy. I don't feel good. I look in the mirror and I'm just torn up inside. I'm just angry. I'm just mad. And maybe there's no actual reason for it. Maybe it's just things that are coming up, trauma. But when I'm looking at that person, I speak life into her. I know that I've said that to you guys, but look at yourself in the mirror. Speak life to yourself. Speak to your being. It doesn't have to be that still small voice that's speaking to you. It can be a louder voice. It can be the voice you wake up hearing in the morning. It can be the voice that you're so comfortable with because you recognize that is who you are, and you're moving away from this recognition and this comfortability and this box and this what you're used to. That's the process that we're in. We're rewiring what culture, society, religion, our pastors have told us who we are, that we need to come up front. We need to repent for all your sins. We need to redo that every Sunday so that we can feel better. We need to do this, and this, read your Bible, Bible study, then church, then Wednesday night church, then Saturday night church, so that we can feel good about ourselves. Tithe. Give. Give. And then that makes you worthy. That is a place of ego. And what my mom was talking about, the spirit of fear that's being released, and it's being broadcasted through everything that we hear, is because people are awakening to this. And they recognize all of a sudden, I don't need my government, I don't need my teachers, I don't need my parents to tell me who I am, I don't need what I watch, what I listen to repeat to me over and over who I am in society, who I am in my culture, who I am as a human being, but I can step right here and know exactly who I am. And from that place, I can release you to be exactly who you are as well. And that spreads like crazy. Now, what is easier for people like our government to do is to release fear. Because under fear, you can control people. Under love, there is no control. And another way to say this is scarcity thinking, abundance thinking. I was doing this when I'm driving. When I drive, I love to drive. When I drive, I love passing people. I love trying to go faster than everybody else. I love trying to win. It's fun for me. I'm like, okay, it's just, and it's become a natural way of thinking when I'm driving. I'm trying to, exactly, how many wrecks have I had? It's been in my mindset, I'm trying to get to where I'm going as fast as I can. So I'm driving, and God said, is that scarcity thinking? You're thinking in ways of competition, or is that love?
All overeating is scarcity thinking.
Scarcity thinking. So I'm driving there and I'm trying to pass people and I'm thinking it's a competition. And God was like, why is this a competition? And when I say God, I'm like, the voice within me is saying, why is this a competition? And I'm like, well, I guess it's not. And as I'm talking to the voice, I hear myself being, well, what would happen if you didn't win the race and you didn't get there as fast as you could? And I was like, nothing would happen. And for the first time, I just sat back in my car and I was enjoying the drive. And in Houston, that's really hard to do. And I was just enjoying it, and I could feel the abundance all over me, because all of a sudden I just switched my mindset. And it might have been something small, but I was training myself subconsciously, because you go into your subconscious mind when you're driving because you're thinking, so you'll see images, but you're just kind of muscle memory driving. And so you're in your subconscious a lot when you're driving. And I'm constantly in a place of competition in my mind. And so it's affecting me in other areas. And so I was speaking, I was praying, and I was just studying and meditating. And I've been watching these videos of people who have ADHD and ADD, and I have a lot of symptoms. And I'm like trying to diagnose myself, self-diagnosis. And I just heard and I will start a project and not finish it, and I'll move on to the next thing, and I just kind of so I got really quiet, and I was meditating, and all of a sudden I heard, that's not ADHD, that's perfectionism. And I was like, what? I'm not a perfectionist. And so I go and I look it up, and I won't even, if I start a project, but I know I can't be the best at it, I won't even finish. Yeah, I don't like to lose. So I won't try to do anything because I know I can't be the best at it, or I can't get it right, or I can't get it perfect. So then I won't even try at all because I don't want to see myself fail. I would rather do it perfect and get it right. So I'm not even going to try because I don't want to see the imperfection in myself. And then I was calling it ADHD because I'm like starting projects and forgetting about them. And God said, no, it's the perfectionism in you and the demand on yourself to be a certain way all the time because you don't see your worth and you're trying to prove worthiness on how, if you can keep everything perfect, then nobody can actually see what's going on with you. No one can see the insecurities. No one can see the deep-rooted fear. And when my dad passed away, that just all came to the top because I had nothing left to hold it down. So all of a sudden, I was dealing with so much anxiety and so much fear, I couldn't be in crowds of people, or I'd be so overwhelmed. And I was like, God, what is this anxiety of this judgment that I'm feeling? I don't think anyone cared that I was even in the room, but I'm feeling like, oh, everybody's judging me. I need to go. I need to hide. This doesn't look right. This doesn't look, this isn't right about me. My nails aren't, like small things. And God was like, you have hidden yourself behind perfectionism to hide who you truly are, out of fear of being recognized in your ego. Because the ego side of me is just as ugly as the ego side in you. And I don't want people to see my ego. I don't want them to hear the thoughts that I have or the things that I do. And so I'm going to create this perfectionist wall of always having it together so you never see that, because I don't actually want to be this person. And all I needed to do to not be that person was recognize that I'm not that person. And I never was that person. And neither were you. But we're around people and family and loved ones who are like, well, you're this way because of this. So then it reiterates that, so then you're rejected, and then you're like, you're right, I am that person. But the reason they're saying that is for you to recognize in you, no, I'm not that person, and for you to tell your truth to them. No, I'm not that person. And, maybe I did that out of myself, but I'm changing. And you know what? I did hurt you. Forgive me. I couldn't admit that I was wrong, because that's letting my wall down of perfection. So my sisters would tell me something that hurt their feelings, and I'm immediately like, well, this is why I did it. I'm just trying to validate. That's fear. I'm just trying to validate myself. That's ego. I just step in here and I go, I was wrong. I shouldn't have did that. That came from a place that's not really who I am. Distance yourself from it. Acknowledge it, distance, say that. Well, that's not really who I am. I'm sorry. Forgive me. I want to be that loving person, not the person that the moment you say something about me, it hits a wound so deep that I'm triggered. So then I'm like, no, this is why I'm that way. If someone's telling you something like that, just go ahead and be like, you know what, sometimes maybe I do act that way. Maybe sometimes I do act out of that part of myself, and I'm sorry. I'm trying to release that more and more every day and be who I am. Anyways, so I just wanted to reiterate everything exactly what Sheila was saying, just with a story, and also because sometimes when I look at this and I'm hearing my mom speak, I'm so intimidated because I'm like, oh, she studies all the time. She reads all these books I don't even understand. It's hard for me to read some of the books you read. It's like, because it's old English or, whatever, and I'm like, I have to reread a sentence over and over to try to get it. But there's an exchange when she speaks that the story will just come up in me, and then it's like, okay, this is what she's saying. And then I'm like, yeah. And I'm putting it together. And the most freeing thing for me is that it's not this process of torment that we have to put ourselves to get to this space. It's just recognizing. It's just being aware. And that part in itself is really hard to recognize and be aware, because you don't want to acknowledge those parts of you. But as soon as you do, as soon as you say that it's there, it's gone. It doesn't exist any longer.
No, this is just another way of saying what they've been saying. And this is kind of out of left field, so just bear with me. You know how sometimes, like, when you're trying to go to sleep, or even when you're trying to wake up, like, it's really hard? I was like, why is that? And I read this months ago, and the post said, an object in motion will stay in motion unless an opposing force is acting upon it. An object in motion will stay in motion unless an opposing force acts upon it. Same thing works with rest. An object at rest will stay at rest unless an opposing force acts upon it. So a person stuck in their ego will stay in the ego unless love acts upon it. So when we're moments when we're ticked off about God knows what, and then in the middle of it, we would go, wait a minute, a joyful noise does rise. That's the opposing force. And it's hard, you know. It's hard, like, when you're stuck in there. But it's the opposing force.
And then you allow it. When you allow it, it begins to dissipate. We're going to do one scripture as we're closing this. Let's look at 1 Samuel 8:1. And we want to title this message, The Game of Thrones. Never seen it. I don't even know. Isn't it? I thought it was a game, actually. Is it a game? It's a movie or something? Okay. So we're talking about, what is it? What is it? It's a what? It's a violent TV show. Okay. So we're talking about government. We're talking about who's on the throne. So I'm looking at my life. This isn't a one-time thing. It's a minute-by-minute thing. Just go ahead and assume that you're eating the fruit of how you've governed your life. That it's not from anyone else, but it's the level that you've governed, and that's what's created your life thus far. Just assume that it's you and your choices, maybe out of ignorance, right? I mean, you guys think we have been so conditioned. I know there's a lot of people that listen from other countries. We've been so conditioned to let somebody else educate our kids. I mean, do you know how many? I remember going to a bunch of leaders years ago, 20 years ago, and these are leaders of all these churches, and they were wanting all the facts about the candidates that were running for different offices so that they could make decisions. Or you wait to see what your pastor or your prophet is saying. All of that is because we have not been living from our God self, and so we live from opinion, which is proud, and it always separates. Opinion always separates. I have a very hard time being in rest around opinionated people. I used to be very, very opinionated, and I don't like it. I don't like it in myself. I don't like it in other people. It could be, you know what I mean? Because it separates. Opinion is from the carnal mind, and it separates because there's only one opinion, and it's the voice of God. Okay, so let's look at this. Is there anyone up there? 1 Samuel 8:1. When Samuel, this is the prophet, at this point, it was carnal man. They lived in their mind, so God would have to raise up prophets. We believe in the fivefold ministry, but we've been dismantling it for years. We believe in the gifts, but we've been dismantling it because even whenever you say that person has a gift, right when I say it, it causes me to feel like I don't. It brings separation. And what we did is we built a very, very codependent church that I'm dependent on that part of you. Now, I know that here's the deal. He might have developed some gifts that you didn't develop. So, like, come over and help him with his cabinets or whatever, right? You know what I'm saying? But the whole thing is in the church, we would say that person is this and I'm not. They can hear and I can't. Does that make sense? So it's the us and them. So at this point, it was only a carnal man that was on the earth. So God would raise up prophets, and the prophets would be the voice of God. The prophets would be the voice of God. So here's Samuel. When Samuel grew old, he appointed his sons as Israel's leaders. Verse 2. The name of his firstborn was Joel. The name of his second was Abijah. And they served in Beersheba. Here we go. 3. But his sons did not follow his ways. They turned aside after dishonest gain and accepted bribes and perverted justice. When it says his sons did not, that means his sons were ignorant of his ways. They were impotent. They were incapable. They were unable. They were worthless, and they refused. So we're talking about the king, the carnal king on the throne, the mind that the living by opinion and living by the Spirit of God with what's in you. So Samuel was a voice from heaven, but his sons didn't follow his ways. They turned aside. That means that they went a different path. They went down a different journey. They had their own thing. That dishonest gain is they gained things they wanted profit in it. They took bribes. They took gifts. They had a perverted justice. So here's this man of God, the voice of God in the earth, and his sons were going to operate from this. And the people come to him, to Samuel, and they said, give us a king. At this point, Israel had never had a king. And they say, give us a king. We want to look like other nations. We want to rule out of our opinion, out of our own mindsets. We want to decide who gets to be president. We want to say our 2 cents worth. We want to decide which doctrine. We want to decide. We want to look like everyone else, and we want the right to decide, which was never the voice of a true son of God. Jesus completely laid down his opinion and his right to decide. Okay? And so we want this. We want to look. Give us a king. And so the carnal mind becomes the king that we rule by. And Samuel comes to them. Stay with me here. And the Lord said, listen to what they're saying. Attend to what they're saying to you. This is verse 7. It is not that they haven't rejected you, but they've rejected me as their king. That's why if it's a small thing and you begin to acknowledge it, you're gaining ground in the Spirit. Because there's listen guys, most of our sicknesses, don't get mad at me. This is what God's saying to me. The sicknesses is because we've handed over our kingship to somebody else. Literally, the voice of God within you will tell you what you need to do to heal yourself. Not a God, not the sky God. The voice of God within you will take you down the path to heal yourself. But we relied on a system. People are leaving Western medicine like never before by the droves. Alex was in a fair. She does these shows, what they're called? The art show you're doing today. She's going to that today? Sure, she said. I'm sure I'm saying it wrong. And this person's from California, and they're coming here to start a rehab a healing center. Like some of you have that in your heart. People are leaving Western medicine, but how did Western medicine start? How did they brainwash us that this is good? Why are we all of a sudden waking up to what's in a vaccine? How many times have you been vaccinated already? We didn't care. We didn't have kingship in that area. We trusted another. I'm not telling you that to be cynical and not trust. I'm telling you to trust the king within your spirit. And we've got to learn to live different. When it says to test the spirit, Scripture says test the spirit. It doesn't mean to test it if it's wrong. How many of you guys want to get on a plane that had never been flown before? It's a new thing. They hadn't tested it. Test it to see if it's going to bring forth the fruits of heaven. Right? Are y'all out there? I'm ending with this. So verse 8, as they have done from the day I brought them out of Egypt until this day, they're forsaking me. Samuel, get over yourself. They're forsaking me as their God. They're forsaking the government from within, and they're serving their own minds. They're serving other gods, so they are doing to you. Now listen, but warn them. And when it says warn them, it says repeat this to them and make it clear. And then he goes on to say, this is what's going to happen if you trust your mind. If you allow your carnal mind that's attached to the senses to be the king, and it's been the king, it's what's governed us. And now all of a sudden we're like, look at our life, and our kids don't understand even how to balance a checkbook. Oh, we gave it over to the educational system. We gave our rulership over. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm saying within you is the answer on what to do in all of it. But we've trusted every other system. And so Samuel said, and he repeated him, and he warned him. He goes, this is what's about to happen. If you trust the opinion, the culture, if you trust the carnal man, if you trust your mind, if you're a senseless sheep. I'm talking to people right now. We think that we live in more of a socialistic country than we understand. Our educational system has been socialistic for a very long time. There's just a few people that make decisions on what go in that book, and they take out what they want to take out. And we get shocked when they're talking about oral sex in kindergarten. They've been doing that for 20 years. They've been feeding our kids lies. And I'm not telling you that like, oh my God, can't you get this feeling like, well, what do? You govern from the inside. You hear from heaven. You hear from heaven on the inside. We are not ignorant sheep. I was just told in Australia you can't do cartwheels in school. They made it a law. Yeah. I just want to do a cartwheel right now. But we don't get upset until we think it affects us, but we've been asleep for a very long time. I'm talking to those that want to mature in their God self. Samuel said, okay, here's the voice of God. We're going to end with this. They're going to take your sons. Your sons are going to serve the system. They're going to take your daughters. Your daughters are going to serve the systems. They're going to take your land. They're going to take the fruit from your land. They're going to they're going to tax you to death. You want a system, you're going to be owned by the system. And Samuel came out and he said, okay, you guys want a king? You want to feel secure? You don't want to let the king of God rule within you? This is who it's going to cost the next generation. It's going to cost you your finances. It's going to cost you your marriages. It's going to cost you your health. It's going to cost you everything in this earth that you're working for. It will cost you. The systems only serve the system. Now, here's the deal. The reason I'm being so passionate is it's not a system outside of me. It's a system within me. It's the system of opinion. I don't just get irritated at my own opinions. I have to stop and realize that when I operate from the senses, the 5 senses, it's attached to the death realm. The reason it's hard to shift from ego to the love, the spirit within us, is because we've been so attached to a false self. So this is what I'm learning to do. When God says, like Alex is saying, that's not who you are, then you sit there all of a sudden and you go, well, then I don't know. Society said I was this. I found my value in this. These are you that your gift doesn't work for you anymore. It's good. It's a good thing. I don't know then, God. You're in a good place. I was talking to someone yesterday, and they said, I'm so tired. And I'm like, good. Didn't tell them that. They're crying. Like, tired of defining who we are by opinion and letting a king rule over us. Your senses, what you think, we don't even, listen, it comes down to, I don't even know what beauty is. I don't even know. You come to a place when you shift of such vulnerability when you've been attached to this natural world. There's a thing, and I wrote this down. It's the fears matrix. It's collective consciousness that was seeded by the hand of experience, and then it's nurtured by memories and projections. It's collective. It's telling you what's right and wrong, rather than you being governed from within. And from the fears matrix, it's manipulated by culture and the leaders of culture. It's the reason the people that came out of the Great Depression, what did they do with their money? The Depression was over, and they buried it in their backyard. And you'd find jars of money in their backyard, and the way that they ate, everything affected them by memory. You will be ruled by memory when you're ruled by your carnal mind. I will be ruled by memory and experience. So, even though it sounds small, go eat what just gave you food poisoning. Go to a different restaurant, whatever. Go do what you're afraid of. When you feel that thing in the pit of your stomach, that's when you know to run after that trigger, because there's the freedom. And God is raising up sons and daughters that will rule from his voice. The voice will end. And guys, listen, let it shake. It's going to affect every one of us. I mean, there's panic all around right now, and it's going to increase, and it's a good thing. It's a good thing, because the truth of who you are is going to be formed in it. Is that good? All right. All right. Eddie, come up. Monica and Travis are going to come and give us announcements at the end. Y'all are stirring, huh?
Well, after listening to this morning's message, I just happened to last night watch with Elba and Jonathan and Ox the movie The Patriot. And there were some things I saw in the movie as I was watching it, which reminded me of the fact that Mel Gibson tried the whole movie to not engage into war. He really didn't want to get into the violence. He didn't really want to, he wanted to negotiate. He wanted to figure out a way that they could avoid war because he had fought as a British soldier in the French and Indian War, and it was so horrible that basically he didn't want to see his family go through it. And no matter how hard he tried, his wife had said something to him that he said to his son, you know, what helped you change from this violence and hate? And she made the statement, stay the course. And that statement later on in the movie had greater significance, but I don't want to spoil the movie, so I'm not going to tell you all about it, but I will tell you what I did get. And that was the message that she's talking about is something that was reiterated to me when we just did the last wake. And that is, we learned how to perfect being human from growing. So no matter what your situation is, if you try to stop it from the ego or the human part that you developed so well that you figured could solve every solution, you end up finding yourself sometimes in a big mess. And you're thinking, how could I do that? I learned how to do this, and if I take control, I can really make things happen. Well, what I've learned through all my years of life, that there was a spirit part of me that came from a being that was out of this earth who sent a son down to give us an example of how to live out of the spirit. So if he came and made that kind of sacrifice to learn how to become a spirit, there must be something to the spirit side that we've got to learn. So what I learned was that as I surrender to the spirit side and become less trying to be controlled by the human side, the spirit side now starts to teach the human side how to overcome fear with perfect love. Perfect love casts out fear. So in the movie, what was the most dramatic thing that I saw last night was that no matter how hard he tried to avoid what he knew would happen when the war came, he couldn't do it. And he was very smart, and he was very well versed. But in the end, it took 2 of his children. It really, I'm not even going to tell you how devastating it was, but it was to the point where he realized that if you are dealing with the human being, how deep evil can go and how bad things can get are almost unimaginable. But if at the end he went for what he knew was right, that evil was not something that God created for us. So therefore, if you connect with the idea, which I believe he connected with, of freedom to think and speak and act on the voice that comes from the love part of you, that's how we overcome all this evil, all this fear, everything, because it has the answer to every question, every problem, every situation. So I just encourage you, don't try to control it through your mind or the ego or the part that we know the knowledge of good and evil. Just like Sheila was saying, I've finally gotten to the point where I don't have opinions anymore. I've got observations, but I'm not trying to tie a feeling, emotion, or opinion to it. Because if I do, that's right. So if you will just understand that you can make the reality of your world real, but allow it to be a co-creator with the spirit and being that you really are, your essence, then eventually life becomes exactly what you wanted it to be. So that's it. Thanks.
So in it, when it says perfect love casts out fear, it's mature. As you're maturing in the nature of who you are, it's going to this lower frequency won't even exist. I'm not talking about feeling afraid. I'm talking about the lower frequency that brings death, living like just a natural human. It'll be gone, because when it says perfect love, it's mature nature in you, mature God nature. Then there's no fear. There's no death. There's no darkness. There's no shadow. Are y'all good? You guys go ahead and stand up with me. Travis has some announcements. I love you guys. It's exciting.
Hello. So we are taking your kids camping. 10 to 12-year-olds plus the 12 to 18-year-olds. We are going camping next Friday, parents. We've been sending you information through email and through text. So if you have not responded to us yet, please respond, because we're trying to get a full count. We want to thank everybody that, I think maybe 6 months ago we raised money for this. So it's not really any money coming out of the parents, because we have the money for it. But there are things that we need your kids to bring. There are permission slips that we need you to sign. We're leaving next Friday at 5 o'clock from the church, and you'll pick your kids up the following Saturday night from the church. So we'll give you all that information. We've sent it out to you. It's on your email and it's on your text. And Blake has information on some things that you might need to do. Also, we're having youth right after church. Yep. So if you have youth, we have food for you. We're going to have activities. Karuna, wherever she is, me and Karuna are teaching. It's going to be exciting, fun. We want you there. Okay.
Okay, so just to reiterate what Monica said, we're going to be leaving for the camping trip on Friday at 5 o'clock, and we're coming back Saturday at 7, so we're just going to do overnight. Basically, a few things just to think about is any sort of gear. It could be a little chilly. I think that we're looking pretty